Alright, hopefully the lighting will be okay. It's dark out now, and as I mentioned in video 1, I just moved my sewing room, so I'm still working on lighting. It's better lighting than what I had, but not what I need it to be yet, so we'll have to make do for now. So we are going to start right now with step number 18. So this is our bottom exterior panel, and then one bottom exterior panel cut from the lining fabric. We'll place those right sides together. This is going to make a back pocket. So I prefer to have the exterior fabric on the outside of the bag still, and that's how the pattern's written. You could put the lining fabric facing the outside if you wanted it to look different. If you decided, I don't use a magnetic snap on my back pocket. That's just one less thing that I have to, open up or worry about snapping when I'm using it. But when we attach it to the main panel, I just put a couple stitches down the center to keep the back of it tacked closed so that it doesn't gape open. And you can still, slide objects in each side if you decide that you want to be able to open it, because maybe you need to put something longer in there that you won't be able to get in that way. I'd recommend putting a magnetic snap. So you'll want to install one half of the magnetic snap centered on the lining panel now before you sew them together. So I just clipped the top, I clipped the top raw edges together, and now I'll stitch that with 1/2 inch seam allowance. I have the light off on my sewing machine because it seems to drown out the camera, so hopefully this works out okay. I don't know how jumpy that is when I sew, because I have a tripod kind of sitting here on my sewing machine table. I had a different setup before with shelves above my machine, and I was able to attach the tripod to the shelf above, so it was actually hanging down from above. And now I have nothing above me, so it's a little different. I had to figure out how to set up. Always backstitch. Okay, cut my threads. Now I'll be right back. I'm going to flip these wrong sides together, and I'm going to press that top seam that we just put in. Alright, we've flipped them, the two bottom exterior panels, wrong sides together, right sides out, lining and exterior. And now we'll just top stitch along this top seam. Again, I always increase my stitch length, usually to a 4 when I'm sewing fabric bags for my top stitching. If I'm sewing vinyl or leather, then I use the longest stitch length, which my machine, the longest it goes to is 5. So, but if you have longer, that wouldn't hurt, but a 5 works well. Okay, we top stitched that. Now we will take, this is step 19. We have the back exterior main panel. This one has the fusible fleece adhered to it, and we're going to place the pockets on top of that, lining the bottom and the sides up. Just kind of make sure that it looks like it's straight, equal distance here. And then just clip around that, and we will baste around the sides and bottom of this pocket. And again, if you had chosen to use a magnetic snap, you would have put it centered on your lining main panel, And then make sure here you would mark the placement of that snap on the exterior main panel and put the other side of the snap in here before sewing this pocket on. Then you would just snap your snaps in place and line up around the bottom and sides and baste the pocket on just the same. Alright, so basting, I just used my longest stitch that I have. Back stitching is not necessary, but I guess I do it usually out of habit anyway, so I won't be removing these stitches, so the back stitching won't hurt anything. So I feel like I should play some music or something so you guys have something to listen to while I'm just sewing and not talking. There's only so much to say about basting a pocket on. I always just readjust as I go to avoid puckers, and sometimes the fabric can shift a little bit since I don't have like a walking foot, so the top can kind of get pulled up. I don't know. I just readjust to make sure I don't get any puckers and that I'm not ending up with this side being uneven from the other side. Trim my threads. Okay, now I need to mark the center, and we'll do about a 1 inch mark. This is step 20. And then we'll sew along that line and we'll back stitch a few times to lock it in place, and that will just keep this pocket. If you don't do that when you're using the bag, let's see, this pocket will just kind of gape open. So by putting that line of stitching here, it'll hold the pocket closed. So how do I want to, all right, let me grab a ruler. All right. So this pocket is 15 inches wide at the top. So 7.5 inches would be the center. My 1/2 inch marks are worn off on this ruler. So I'm just going to make a mark there and then kind of pull this down and make another 15.5 inch mark. And then just kind of connect those. Let's see. It's about 1 inch long. It doesn't have to be exact. It could be 1/2 inch, whatever. Just enough that it's not going to get ripped out. Okay, and I probably didn't need to make the mark that dark, but so that you can see it. Alright, and then I just use a shorter stitch length, so around 3. And just start at the top and stitch right along that line all the way to the bottom. And then I'll back stitch, stitch again, back stitch, stitch again. Just really lock that in place. If you're using vinyl or leather, if you're not, when you back stitch like that, if it's not going down in the same exact hole, you'll be perforating your vinyl or your leather, so you don't want to back stitch like that in those situations, or you'll end up with ripped vinyl. Alright, trim threads. When I iron it, that darkness will go away, so I'm not worried about that. Alright, so that was the end of step 20. Step 21 is to get the lining pocket panels sewn, and so we'll get the lining pieces attached. We'll get both lining panels finished in this video, and then the next video we'll start with the gussets. So step number 21 grab the pocket panels. Okay, I have 2 pocket panels here cut from the lining fabric. You'll place them right sides together and pin or clip all of the raw edges. What do you guys prefer, clips or pins? I used to pin everything. And I have these clips now. I had these red ones I bought a while ago at Joann Fabrics. And they're the name brand. What is the name brand? Clover Wonder Clips. And I liked them, but they don't seem to grip always that tight, or maybe mine are just getting old and they're worn out. But then I bought these colorful ones off of Amazon, and I got like 100 of them for maybe $6. And they actually have a much tighter grip than the Wonder Clips, which were, you know, like $16 for $50 or something. So I really, really love these Amazon brand clips. And I don't really pin as much anymore, unless it's something that you obviously can't pin. Okay, so I clipped all the way around that. And then you want to make sure you leave a gap at the top to turn this right sides out. I just leave about a 3-inch gap, and I'm really just going to eyeball that. If I don't make my marks, I will sew the whole thing closed. So I always make marks even if I'm just sewing myself. And now you'll start here and sew around with 1/2 inch seam allowance, and make sure that you backstitch at the start and stop of this one for sure, because when you turn the pocket right side out, you'll rip the stitches right out. Always pivot with your needle down. And take the curve slow if you need to. Sometimes you have to lift the presser foot to just get your curve nice and smooth. And that's okay. Maybe this is why I'm so slow. I will hand stitch all the way around curves when I need to, or I don't know, I always feel like I sew really slow, but I think it's just because I'm like a perfectionist, so I want everything to be just right, and I don't want to have to rip it out. I will if I'm not pleased with it, but yeah, I figure it's not a race, and if I want my bag to look nice and up to my standards, then I guess slow it is. So, alright, all the way back around to that second mark, back stitch. Alright, trim those threads. Ooh. Alright. So now we want to cut or trim off the seam allowance here. We're going to leave the seam allowance where the opening is for turning. And that's just so we have something to tuck in when we top stitch. Ooh, don't get too close to your stitches. Oh, I also feel like when you trim the seam allowance like this, so I'm trimming it down to about 1/8 of an inch, you can get a nice curve when you turn it without having to do notching. Like, I hate cutting notches in curves. Really, really hate it. I tried pinking shears and it's just not the same, and I just really hate notching. So I find that trimming that seam allowance short, it takes care of that problem. You don't need to notch anything. So cut your corners off like that so that you can get those nice and poked out later. Alright, so now that we've trimmed that seam allowance, we will turn this right sides out. have a tool somewhere. Oh, I see it. Here, you guys can look at this wadded up mess for a second. Okay, so I have this stick. Originally, I had one that came with a bag of polyfill stuffing. And I guess it was used for stuffing the stuffing down in narrow places, maybe stuffed animals or whatever. That one's missing now, but I also have this one right here. Came out of a turning tool that I have, like a Dritz tube turning tool or something like that. Or chopsticks work well. I've used scissors, although you can poke through your fabric with that. But it works well to have some kind of a stick or something like this. You can really press down or press into the corners and get those poked out really well. And then also, I take that stick, if you can see, and I just press all the way around the edges, and I push those seams right out. And it really helps me to get a nice, crisp seam. See? I just use some pressure, and then I'm going to go over to the iron now, and I'm going to press this nice and flat, and I will turn this opening in and press that nice as well, and then we're going to come back and top stitch this top edge. So let me go press this. Okay, so we are turned right sides out, and the pocket's pressed well. This would be step number 23. We're going to top stitch along this top edge, which will close that hole we left for turning. Alright, step number 24, we're going to fold the pocket in half lengthwise and finger press to mark the center. So just eyeball that in half and finger press. So you see the center mark there? Okay, and now we will take a lining main panel, fold that in half as well to mark that center seam. Press. Alright, so now we will take the pocket, place it on the lining main panel, match those center seams, and we want this to be 1 inch up from the bottom. Alright, pretty close. So there's my 1 inch mark, and we'll pin that in place. Let's get the ruler out of the way. Pin the center mark. Again, like I said before, I think I overpin everything probably. I've been working on that, so sometimes, none of my videos, I'll show you guys the right way to do it, but I've been trying to just not pin things sometimes, which maybe doesn't always work out the best, but alright. So we've got that pinned in place, and now we'll top stitch with an 1/8 inch seam allowance down the sides, around the curves, and back up the other side. Make sure you back stitch well at the top of this, maybe a couple times, just to prevent, you know, there'll be stress on those corners when things are put in and out of the pockets, and just to help prevent that from ripping loose. Probably also pretty daring of me to use a bright yellow thread. Well, it's mustard, I guess, but it looks pretty bright on this pink, so. Alright. Trim the threads. That was step 24. So now we will go on to step 25, where we will need the other lining main panel and the zipper pocket panels. So I'm going to place this aside. And here we have the zipper panels. Is that what I call them? A zipper pocket panel. We want it wrong side up with an 11-inch edge along the top. We will draw a 9-inch long line along that top edge. So this is my top edge here. And we want a 9-inch line. So from 10 to 1. And then 1/2 inch below that line, we'll make another 9-inch line. And then connect those lines. Okay. We are going to finger press this again to get a crease down the center. All right, and we'll finger press this as well. Make sure I actually line it up. All right, now we want to have these right sides together and 1.5 inches down from the top. So let's see, 1.5. Okay, right sides together, and I'll match those center marks up, and then I'm going to pin that in place. There's somebody yelling outside. Looking for a dog, maybe. I don't know if you could hear that. Alright, these pins are horrible. I thought they were the same as the brand I normally use. My other pins are getting bent up because I have a habit of sewing over top of them. Interesting. Somebody's yelling outside again. Alright. So I pin that in place and I'm going to sew directly along. Ow. Ow. Hold please. Alright. Hopefully I don't bleed all over my bag. And whoever was outside yelling was definitely yelling for, I think, their kid, because they were just arguing as they walked by. So that's interesting. Alright. So we're going to sew directly along that line that we drew all the way around this rectangle box. Back stitch. Alright, so I sewed all the way around the box. I'll trim my threads, take these pins out. Alright, and now we'll draw a line down the center of that box. Just like we did when we attached the pocket facing to the exterior front pocket. So 1/2 inch or so from the ends, draw a line right down the center, and then stop 1/2 inch from that end, and then from the corner to the end. Okay, now I'll be right back. I'm going to cut with my rotary cutter along that line. Okay, so I cut along that line, and then I will cut to each of these corners, and just be very careful to not cut through your stitching. But get pretty close to it. The closer you can get without cutting through it, the neater your corners of your box will look when you turn this, when you flip that pocket panel to the other side. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my ironing board now, and I'll pull this pocket panel through that opening and press it along the back side really well. So I will be right back with that pressed. Okay, so my zipper rectangle opening is ironed nicely. The pocket lining fabric is now right side out with the inner facing part facing the inner facing on the main panel. Now you want your zipper. Well, we're going to put the zipper in this hole. I always like my zippers to close to the left. I don't know if that's right. It's just what I always do. So here's how I put my zippers in pockets like this. You could use double-stick tape, double-sided tape. You could use pins. I know people tape them in place sometimes and then sew over the tape, and then you can take the tape off. I use an Elmer's washable school glue stick, whatever kind I have. I think these were left over from the 300 glue sticks that my son needed for school last year. So I just put that right along the edge of the rectangle that we just made. And it dries clear, so I mean, if it goes over a little bit, it's not a big deal. Alright, so now take your zipper, and of course I never have the right size zippers for pockets. I just buy a whole bunch of, like, I don't know, 14-inch zippers or something. And I just cut them. So we are going to put the zipper in our opening and line it up nicely. And then I just really try to press that down well. The glue stick's not going to hold it like long term. Like when we did that front pocket, you need that double-sided tape because, I mean, if I fold this, the zipper's going to come off. It's not a real long holding thing, but it works to hold it long enough to get me to the sewing machine and keep the zipper in place. So I'll just slide this over, and then with a 1/8 inch seam allowance, we are going to sew around that rectangle to attach the zipper. And I'm going to try to be really careful since I'm using this yellow thread on this pink fabric. usually hand stitch up the ends where I'm sewing over the zipper. I guess with a regular nylon coil zipper, it's not going to matter because you can sew right over the teeth. It won't break your needle, but habit, I guess I always hand stitch that usually. Alright, and back to where I started, and of course a couple back stitches to lock that in. Trim my threads. If you wanted to put a label in your bag, I always like to put mine just below the zipper, so I would do this lining zipper pocket and then pull that pocket lining up out of the way. And then I would always sew my label, usually just below the zipper. You could also sew it on the other side, just above that slip pocket. Personal preference, you can put it right in the center. I usually liked mine down below the zipper. So, let me flip this to the back. We'll cut off the excess. And the ends of this will be in the pocket seam allowance, so it won't be exposed in the lining of your bag. I'm going to go over to my iron, and I'm going to press this pocket, the bottom of this pocket piece, 1/2 inch to the wrong side, and we'll be leaving the bottom of that open to turn the bag right side out later. So let me go press that, and I'm going to press my other lining pocket panel 1/2 inch on the bottom as well. Okay, so I have that bottom edge pressed to the wrong side 1/2 inch, and then I press the bottom edge of this other lining zipper pocket panel to the wrong side 1/2 inch. And now I will pin or clip these two panels together, right sides together, and then we'll sew along both sides and along the top, but we'll leave the bottom open to turn the bag right side out when we're finished. Oops. I like all my clips to go in the same way, and since I'll be sewing from the other side, I clip them this way. I like that flat part to be on the bottom. It lays nicer. Alright, so now from this side of the bag, we'll fold that main panel out of the way, and we're going to sew around the lining pocket panels at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay. Here the whole time I've been sewing, and you guys can't see what I'm doing. That might be better now that I'm about done, but we'll do another video after this, so. Someday I'll get this figured out, right? Okay, so I have that pocket panel sewed together. We left the bottom edge open. You don't need this pocket to be open, unzipped right now, but you will. So it's not a bad idea to unzip it right now so that you don't forget later. So right now it's just open all the way through. We will set both of these pocket panels aside. We just finished step 29. The next step is step 30, which will be the beginnings of sewing on the gussets. So I think I'll do that in video number 3.